Okay, so hello everyone. As you may or may not know, this week is Video Game Week. I'll be talking about this game that I'm currently playing right now called The Last of Us. I'll be talking about it in relation to the article that we had to read, Rise of the Video Game Zinesters by Anna Anthropy. There's a lot to talk about in 6 minutes, so I'm going to apologize in advance if I'm talking really quickly, but I guess keep up if you can. So I'll be narrating as I'm playing this game because I wanted to do it this way because it's a really common way games are enjoyed by the gaming community right now. In fact, the number one most subscribed YouTuber with 70 million subscribers is Felix Schellberg, otherwise known as PewDiePie, just to give you an idea of how relevant gaming is to the media landscape right now. So this game started development in 2009 and then released in 2013. And a lot of the buzz that surrounded it is because Alright, this is good. I picked a really good spot to start this. Alright, so anyway, I'll continue as this is happening. So this game started development in 2009 and released in 2013. A lot of the buzz happened in this game because of who Naughty Dog is. So they have quite a reputation. In the 90s they did Crash Bandicoot, and then they did Jak and Daxter, and then they did the Uncharted series, all really popular games. So when this game released, it ended up selling, I believe it was 1.7 million copies in the first week, and then by April 2018 that had risen to 17 million. And is still counting. It's got a lot of Game of the Year awards, and I think still stands as one of the most award-winning games in the history of gaming. So I'm going to start by talking about what made it successful conventionally.
Let's go.
So we can talk about here what made this game so successful in the conventional sense. So one of the first things is that it's insanely visually stunning. You can kind of see that here. I mean, this isn't anything new. A lot of the games that released in 2013 were already kind of making the same strides in visual art, namely Grand Theft Auto 5, Assassin's Creed, Tomb Raider. Those are all kind of games that kind of push the boundaries for visual art. And then other than that, the storyline is really interesting. It's centered around an interesting dynamic of a father, aka the main character here, Joel, who I'm playing as right now. He lost his daughter 20 years earlier, thanks to the goings-on of the zombie apocalypse that this game is centered around. And then the girl ahead of us right there is just a young 13-year-old girl. She has a separate story that I'll get to later on in the video. And then the last thing is that the gameplay is very dynamic and creative, and it's based on the exploratory decisions that you make. So all of these are just very common reasons cited by critics and by gaming journalists for the success of The Last of Us. But I think the more important conversation is what sets it apart. Alright, so this is a different part of the game. I moved here because I want to talk in this section thinking about the point in the reading that says that games are designed by a small, male-dominated culture and marketed to a small, male-dominated audience, which in turn produces the next small, male-dominated generation of game designers. So in that quote, Anna is referring to how the conventions of mainstream gaming are perpetuated, which is driven by storytellers in the industry who are mostly young, heterosexual males, and I mainly put The Last of Us forward because it's a really excellent example of a AAA, top-of-the-line, best-selling game enjoyed by the mainstream audience, by a top developer in the market that pushes the envelope for women in gaming on both the consumer and developer side, and very much embraces a place for them in their storylines. I mean, you can even see, you'll see in the cutscene that's about to come up, the ratio in the room is 3-to-1 in terms of women, and none of those women fall within standard gaming conventions. So both main and side female characters in the scene are really, really strong and can fend for themselves in the deteriorating world that The Last of Us creates. So Tess and Marlene. Tess is the one in red, Marlene is the one in blue. They're side characters, yet one of them is the leader for an organization in the game called the Fireflies. And one of the main female characters that we really get to see a lot is the one I mentioned earlier, who you can see again here, Ellie. So she carries an immunity to the fungus, and Joel meets her early on in the game and is tasked with escorting her across the country because it's possible that she'll give way to a cure. So you can clearly see that Ellie, as well as all other female characters, they're entirely non-sexualized, they're intelligent, curious, and not portrayed as overly feminine, which several mainstream games have definitely done in the past. So what's really interesting is that The Last of Us allows gamers the opportunity to play as Ellie, which I will have to fast forward to because this is earlier in the game. Okay, so here is the winter portion of the game where you can play as Ellie. I point this out because playable female lead characters in games are pretty rare. They're a lot more scarce, at least, than the classic male lead. But I think what really makes The Last of Us so completely different and so boundary pushing is actually the sequel, The Last of Us 2, which hasn't released yet, but they did release a sneak peek at the gaming conference E3. And it offers the kind of main character storyline that is virtually absent from mainstream gaming storytelling. I'll just roll the clip.
Every guy in this room is staring at you right now. Maybe they're staring at you. Or not. Maybe they're jealous of you. I'm just a girl, not a threat. Oh, Ellie. I think they should be terrified of you.
So what we're seeing here is very unconventional in terms of mainstream gaming. So you have a strong female lead upon which the whole story hinges and one that you play as throughout the game, and B, a same-sex female-female relationship that isn't contrived, sexualized, and placed for the purposes of pleasing a heterosexual male gaze, which is something a lot of mainstream games have done.